Hey kids, welcome to DadsDen of Pop Culture. When I'm recording this, we are sort of halfway between Halloween and Christmas. So I thought it would be the perfect time to talk about a film that is sort of halfway between Halloween and Christmas. You'll see what I mean when we get into it. I am talking about Bell, Book, and Candle from 1958, directed by Richard Quine, starring Jimmy Stewart and Kim Novak. Good flick, essentially a romantic comedy with a few little twists and a lot of style. So let's roll through this. We're going to look at the different scenes and we're going to chat about that. We're going to chat about the story. We're going to chat about the actors and people involved. And that means, of course, that along the way, there are going to be spoilers, just so you are aware. So if you've never watched this before, you might just want to watch it and then come back and maybe listen to what I think of it. But maybe watching this will convince you that you do want to see the movie. All right, well, let's jump on into the film. It begins really before we even see this image with the sound of bongos. So we have sort of a Beatnik, Greenwich Village kind of vibe going. And this is very important to the film. I think it's a key element of the film, that sort of culture on the fringe, counterculture sort of element. But then the first image that we do see, a bustling street, is accompanied by a rendition of Jingle Bells. And then as we zoom in on a particular shop, we get the film's title, and the music changes to the film's main theme, which is sort of, again, kind of a little spooky, a little stylish, okay? And we're going to hear that often throughout the film. Now, this particular shop sells African and oceanic art. Primitive is the term used. It's not meant as a pejorative. And the place is owned by Gillian Holroyd, okay? Gillian. You see the name spelled, you think Jillian. It's not Jillian. It is, in fact, Gillian, which I'm only mentioning that because when I was watching it again, it took me a minute. I'm like, oh, they're saying Gillian. Okay, they're not saying, okay, great. At any rate, we have a very solid cast in this film, starting, of course, with Jimmy Stewart, probably perfect for the role that he plays in this because you need a very normal, everyman sort of guy in a film that is going to surround this character with a lot of very odd and weird things. And there's probably no greater everyman in the golden age of Hollywood than Jimmy Stewart. He is accompanied in the cast by Kim Novak. I reviewed another film she's in called Pushover with Fred McMurray a while back on this channel. You might want to go look for that. And again, I think she is very well cast in this film as a sort of witchy woman, because Kim Novak, she had a particular style to her, a little different, a little, compared to a lot of actresses, a little off. Those eyes, they really kind of drink you in, that stare that she could do. I think she was really good for this. Now, Novak was also chosen for the role, though, because she was on loan to Paramount for a little movie called Vertigo, which also came out in 1958, and which also starred Jimmy Stewart. So yeah, the two of them starred together in two movies in the same year. Now, when Novak's name appears on the screen, you hear the musical signature that goes with her character. I believe it's called a leitmotif. All of the witch characters in the film have their own little musical signature that you'll hear, so pay attention to that as you go. And we'll comment on the rest of the cast as their characters are introduced in the film. But I will note that this movie is based on a play by John Van Druten. Now, the play takes place entirely in the apartment of Shep. That's the character played by Jimmy Stewart. The movie expands on this and fleshes out characters who were only just kind of names in the play. You didn't really get to meet them. So delves a lot more into it. The screenplay for the film was by Daniel Taradash, who did From Here to Eternity. James Wong Howe handles the cinematography in this picture. He won an Academy Award for The Rose Tattoo and for HUD. So we got some good people. Bell Book and Candle also received some Oscar nods, with nominations for Best Art Direction for Carrie O'Dell, who was also nominated for Cover Girl and 7 Days in May. It's a good flick. And Louis Diage, also nominated for the Solid Gold Cadillac and Pal Joey. And Best Costume Design for Jean-Louis, who won for the Solid Gold Cadillac, and who was famous for designing Rita Hayworth's black satin strapless dress from Gilda, which I also reviewed on this channel. And he also designed the gown that Marilyn Monroe wore when she sang Happy Birthday to JFK. The music was composed by George Dunning, who arranged music for Kay Kaiser's College of Musical Knowledge. You'll probably find maybe some old radio shows of that out there. He was a band leader from the South. He's a fun guy. Also did work for Picnic, The World of Susie Wong, Toys in the Attic, and such TV shows as Star Trek and The Big Valley. There's always a Star Trek connection in there somewhere. Direction for this film by Richard Quine. Note the size of the sculpture that accompanies his name as opposed to everybody else's name. Well, kind of a little in-joke. He was one of those directors who kind of did the sophisticated, slightly edgy stuff of his time, like The World of Susie Wong, The Notorious Landlady, which also stars Kim Novak and Jack Lemmon, Paris When It Sizzles, How to Murder Your Wife, and The Prisoner of Zenda, which he did with Peter Sellers. This film has an element of the establishment versus the sort of fringe, the sort of folks who don't fit in with society. We will see which side it comes down with, or maybe it doesn't come down on any side at all. Well, the credits finished, we pan up and we see a Siamese cat, and it leaps onto the shoulder of a beautiful woman who calls it Pyewacket and asks it what is happening to her. And by that, she means to herself, not to the cat. This is Gillian, played by Kim Novak. This is her shop. Note how it's full of exotic art, but it sits on a pretty mundane New York City street. And we see, while she's walking around, she's not wearing any shoes, very bohemian. Culturally, she's outside of the mainstream. She asks the cat, why do I feel this way? She's in a rut. Same old thing, day after day, same people. She knows that she's feeling sorry for herself, but she can't really help it. She asks the cat, why don't you get me something for Christmas, something I'd like. Now note also the Christmas tree next to her, very non-traditional, very artsy. She wants to do something different, to meet someone different. See, again, mainstream versus fringe, in a way, is kind of just popular versus not popular. And all of that doesn't really matter to the individual living within a particular culture or subculture. Her way of life may seem to be exotic and interesting to somebody who is in the mainstream, but inside that culture, she now kind of finds it boring. It's become mundane to her. So, like, what side does it? Maybe what it's really coming down on the side of is the individual. We have now a few generations of people who were raised on the idea of collectivization in art. So a movie is not about a woman and a man. It's about women and men. And it's a statement about collectively all women and all men. But that's not really how art works. This is a movie about individuals, so keep that in mind while you watch it. So at this moment, somebody different actually does appear, and that is Shep, a button-down sort of businessman. He nods his hat jokingly to the sculpture in the window, which suggests he regards all of this exotic stuff as maybe a little bit silly, and he proceeds in the door and up the stairs. So we have the bohemian and sort of the bourgeois of New York City meeting in this film. Now, Gillian wonders why she never gets to meet somebody like that. And she says to the cat, "Why don't you get me him for Christmas pie?" Now, this attitude is really important to the story. At this point, Shep, the man, played by Jimmy Stewart, is a means to her end, not an end unto himself. He's a new toy. He's not really looked at as being a person, an individual. Well, Shep heads up to his apartment, whistling "Deck the Halls," and interrupts an intruder. This is Aunt Queenie, played by the wonderful Elsa Lanchester, who was really good with this kind of eccentric, off-kilter sort of character that she plays in this. She played a similar character, in as much as she was eccentric, in a film called Ladies in Retirement that I reviewed on this channel a while back. Queenie is Gillian's aunt. Now, Sol Sachs, the co-creator of Bewitched, said that he drew on this film and also the movie I Married a Witch for inspiration for his TV show. Bewitched is famous for, of course, Samantha's crazy relatives, Indora, Aunt Clara, Uncle Arthur. And so this film does have kind of a cast of eccentric relatives, well, and also just acquaintances for Gillian. Now, here, Queenie says that she entered the apartment because she saw that Shep's window was opened and it was snowing, which could sort of be true, but she's also snooping. And Shep notes that it's odd that he had to unlock his door to get in. So how did she manage to get in? Well, she and Gillian live above him. He notes that when he's trying to sleep, he can hear her reciting things. Wonders if maybe she studies dramatics. She says, or asks, can you understand what I'm saying? No. Good. I'll try not to do it so loudly. So we're dancing around the identity of these two women and what they really are. Shep invites her to leave so he can do some telephoning, and she's kind of annoyed. She speaks some quiet words over the telephone, though, before she departs. And when Shep picks up the phone, he hears these weird, sort of garbled, almost demonic voices coming through it. So put a little hex on his phone, apparently. Well, this actually has the effect of him heading downstairs and knocking on Gillian's door to basically, ask if he can use her telephone. So this is going to be the first meeting of these characters. So very important. And okay, Pyewacket didn't bring him, but Aunt Queenie sort of did. Heading to the back of the shop, he notes that she's reading a book called Magic in Mexico by an author that he would like to publish. Turns out he's a publisher of books. And you can see why the movie got nods for costuming and for art direction. It's a really beautiful film, and the art really reinforces the characters, which is what art in films really should do. Well, she notes that the book, Magic in Mexico, is just all nonsense. They really fooled the author with that stuff down there. The author is Sidney Redlich, so they gave him a bunch of fake tourist stuff, and he swallowed it whole. But Shep still wishes that he'd published it because it sold like hotcakes. He doesn't really care if it's true or not. He just knows it was a very successful book. She asks him if he would like to meet Sidney Redlich. It's like, well, sure, I'd love to meet him. And she's in all black. She's got that kind of bohemian look. It's sort of related to the sort of hot goth girl look, if you think about it. Mysterious, a little dark, a little strange. It's, there's a little more complexity to the goth outfit, but you can kind of see that it has some relationship to that. Also note in the scene the way Novak delivers her lines. Friendly, but very cool. And again, Novak is perfect at this sort of thing, which is why I'm so glad that they cast her in it. I don't really know who else could have done it as well. So she watches him through this scene like a cat stalking a canary. The cat angle, of course, is very important. Well, she says that she'll arrange a meeting with Redlich, and Shep is very grateful. And when she overhears him explain the problem with his phone, she gives a knowing glance to her apartment upstairs And Aunt Queenie, she kind of knows exactly what happened to it. On the way out, he runs into Queenie again. She's urging Gillian to go with her to the Zodiac Club. All their friends will be there. Well, Shep's never heard of it before. And she said, that's kind of a dive. Note here that he seems less annoyed with Queenie than before, perhaps because he knows that she's Gillian's aunt. And maybe a little attraction is already forming, so you don't want to be crappy to the relative of the girl that you are maybe just a little bit interested in. The scene here also establishes that this is taking place on Christmas Eve. When he leaves, the two women have it out a bit. I like how Gillian tells her she's really angry without really showing that emotion. Again, this is very important to the story. During the conversation, Queenie reveals that she read Shep's letters and knows he is getting married, and this piques Gillian's curiosity. Well, that rules him out, and Queenie says, I don't see why. I don't take other women's men. And here, Queenie, who urges her to do it nonetheless, says outright that she, and Gillian, of course, are witches. Okay, so that's kind of the point here. Shep is stepping into this sort of, underworld of Bohemian witches, right? And I think that's why putting this in New York City at the time with Greenwich Village, they're kind of playing off that, using the Bohemian subculture as sort of a stand-in for witch culture. Well, Gillian asks Queenie for a promise that she will not practice magic in the apartment house anymore. Queenie notes that Gillian does it, and she says, I can be discreet about it. You can't. So Queenie she's obviously older than Gillian, but she's more childlike and also seems to be more alive than Gillian. She shows more emotion and stuff. And maybe that'll have something to do with their respective power levels. But she says, I want you to promise. If you don't, you'll be sorry. And I can make you sorry too. So, Gillian's a little bit scary here and there. Next stop for them is the Zodiac Club. Again, very Bohemian, Greenwich Village. And here we'll meet another of Gillian's relatives, Nicky, her brother, played by Jack Lemmon. He's playing the bongos in this little light sort of jazz group. He's very young. He's very irresponsible, not unlike Queenie, which is already shining a light on the way Gillian differs from all of these other witches. We also meet an elder witch, sort of in passing, Bianca de Pas, played by Hermione Gingold. Hermione, come on. I mean, it's obviously she's going to be a witch named Hermione. The plot thickens a bit here. Gillian admits that she's a bit depressed, which always happens around Christmas. I think that's kind of actually important. And she asks her auntie if she ever wishes that she were not what they are. Gillian says, you could spend Christmas Eve in a little church somewhere listening to carols instead of bongos. But everyday people are so ordinary, so humdrum. Well, it might be pleasant to be humdrum once in a while. She confesses she wouldn't mind being humdrum with Shep Henderson. Enter Mr. Humdrum, 1958. Shep, accompanied by his fiancée, Merle Kittredge, played by Janice Rule, they're walking through the snow trying to find this Zodiac Club that he heard about from Gillian and Queenie. So they're kind of doing a little bit of slumming on Christmas Eve. I thought it was kind of funny that Shep's fiancée, Merle, has the same last name as Tracy Lord's hapless fiancée in the Philadelphia story, which he's also in, which also is sort of about, a meeting of two worlds, regular people and the wealthy. So I don't know if it's probably just a coincidence, but it kind of hit my brain when I heard the name. Well, of course, they do find the Zodiac Club, and this leads to a meeting between Gillian and Merle, with the ultimate effect being that Gillian decides she is going to go after another woman's man, after all, because you see, they know each other. They were in the same dorm at Wellesley, and Merle was kind of a jerk to her there, because obviously Gillian's a little bit different. So there was maybe some bullying. The whole meeting, of course, is a little bit catty. They clearly don't like each other. And Shep kind of gradually realizes he's put himself between two women in this scene. He's kind of oblivious to it at first. It's gradual. It's very well played. Among the points of this scene is establishing that Merle is a snob and really no more warm, maybe even less warm, towards Shep than Gillian. If Merle is a nice, lovable person, that kind of changes the film dramatically. You know, now the witch is sort of a predator trying to take, you know, this man away from a nice woman. But here we kind of put the two women on an even keel, and we can root for Gillian without feeling bad about it. When Merle is tormented a bit with talk of her fear of thunderstorms, which Gillian sort of plays on, getting Nicky and his band to play the horns right next to her head, you don't mind so much that she's being tormented. She's clearly not a real nice person. Well, the first round goes to Gillian. As they walk home, it is resolved that she will take Shep from Merle, but not with witchcraft. She wants to do it the normal way, which, to be honest with you, I mean, Kim Novak would be pretty well equipped to just steal a guy without using witchcraft. But Auntie wonders if this is because she's lost her powers due to falling in love. Oh, plot point, no. She says it's the other way around. Witches cannot fall in love. Okay, so which is true? Maybe both in a way are true. If Shep, though, is just a plaything to her, which is kind of the first, you know, thing you kind of get from this, why not use magic to control him? Why not play with him for a while, then let him go when you've tired of the little game? So you're starting to hear to maybe get a little, maybe some mixed signals about Gillian, what she's ultimately after. So when they open their gifts, Nicky wonders why witches through history have usually been poor when you consider their powers. Queenie notes that it's because most of them were never any good at magic, just like them. Oh, but not Gillian. She's quite good at magic. And I thought that was actually kind of a great explanation, because people will say, you know, well, if there's such a thing as magic, why wouldn't the magic people have, you know, a lot of wealth and a lot of power and stuff? And it's like, well, you know, just because they can cast spells doesn't mean they're actually any good at it. Well, Nicky's gift to Gillian is a magic liquid, a sort of a potion. If you paint it on a picture and you set fire to it, that person has to come to you. So Gillian decides to try it right then and there. Her target, it's not Shep, it's Sidney Redlich, the author Shep would like to meet. Oh, see, that creates the connection, right? Without, well, kind of using magic, but not entirely using magic. So Shep, on the way home, because remember he lives upstairs, sees this column of flame and rushes in out of concern. And by the way, it's a really great shot. There are so many great shots in this. If you're just a visual sort of person, don't even care about characters, don't care about story, if you're just a visual person, watch this movie. It's really, really, really beautifully done. But this also gives Shep, running in there, a chance to reconnect with Gillian after the whole club incident, and to meet Pyewacket, who scratches him. He seemed nice at first, and then he scratches him. Pyewacket was provided to the film by Frank Inn, the owner and trainer of Benji and many other animals and films, and he ended up giving the cat to Kim Novak when he saw the bond that formed between them during the filming. And you can kind of tell her and the cat have kind of they do have a bond. Just the way when she's holding the cat and the way it reacts to things. So they're talking, you know, just kind of casually, kind of nice, nothing real serious. She does at one point mention, okay, talking about where he lives, it's nice having you over me. And when she says that, he kind of shifts uncomfortably a little bit. I mean, it's nice having a man nearby in case he's needed, which is sort of better than what she first said, but not entirely better than what she first said. She's sending out the signals, and obviously he is receiving them. So he answers by telling Gillian that he and Merle are getting married today. It was decided on the way home in the car. Gee, I wonder why Merle decided to push the wedding date up a little bit. And note again, there's this cat-like element in Gillian's posture here. It also occurred to me that Old Shep is often a name that was given to dogs back in the day. Loyal, reliable dog. So then maybe there's a little bit of dog versus cat imagery here. As Shep chats about getting married and such, he's kind of running on. Gillian summons Pyewacket and begins staring at him in a very witchy sort of manner. And again, it's just absolutely beautiful the way they filmed this. And it kind of, you see the lighting changes. Tremendous scene. She stares, she's stroking the cat, and he begins to cough and sputter as he talks. And she begins humming, and you hear Pyewacket purring. And as he decides he'd better leave due to the late hour, he can't quite do it. You know, he inquires about what tune she's humming. He makes a few attempts to literally walk out of the place, but he keeps sort of rocking back on his heels. And he finally turns in utter fascination, like he's seen Gillian for the very first time, like it's love at first sight. And he kisses her. In desperation, she went back on her intentions. She used magic to capture his heart. She had to have him. But is trickery the best foundation for a relationship? A double spoiler alert. No, it really isn't. So we'll see how that ultimately plays out. So we hear them chatting to one another. I can't think, not when I'm close to you. That's Shep talking. And then see that they're on the top of the Flatiron building. They've spent the night together, but seemingly not in that way. And it's now 6 a.m. When his hat gets in the way of a kiss. He tosses it off the roof, and we see the hat descend all the way from the roof to the street below. It's really a great shot, but also, I think, again, very symbolic of what's happening. And then he asks her, what have these hours meant to her? And she cannot really answer. Remember, apparently as a witch, she cannot fall in love. She's been playing at it, but perhaps not really falling in love the way Shep has. The mention of the word love has a definite effect on her. But of course, if she's not falling in love, why should she even care? If it's just a game, what does it really matter? At home, later on, she muses about what she's done, and Shep is practicing how he's going to tell Merle that the wedding is off and the relationship is now over. Well, he does do that. The conversation, by the way, does not go really well. When he gets into work, a gentleman is there waiting to see him. Side note, by the way, I am 95, maybe 99% certain that horse sculpture in this office is the exact same one that was in the Brady Bunch living room. And also, speaking of his office, it is completely and totally rad, mid-century modern. It is awesome, and he's a publisher. Shelves and shelves of books. It is just like a nerd's paradise. Well, the man waiting for him is, of course, Sidney Redlich, played by Ernie Kovacs, who really works in this part. I gotta say, I don't think you could cast this movie better. I really don't think you could cast this movie better. I don't right offhand think of other actors who would fit as well into these roles, especially the way the film, the art direction of the film, the way it's done, the music. Perfect people in every single role. So he sort of just walks into the office unannounced and introduces himself saying, I think I want to see you. He is completely confused as to why. Of course, Shep is also shocked that the guy is there. Kovacs looks like this slice of the 1970s that's been ported into the 1950s with the hair and everything like that. He's almost like a sign of things to come. We also in the scene get a moment of Shep's partner, played by the great Howard McNear, Floyd the Barber from Andy Griffith. He was in Blue Hawaii, which I reviewed on this channel. See, now that I'm getting lots and lots of movies reviewed, all the connections are there. So Redlich's next book is going to be called Magic in Manhattan, and he weaves a tale of witchcraft surrounding them in New York, which naturally the two of them don't believe. But in the course of his pitch, he remarks that witches and warlocks, well, they look like anyone else, and that they cannot cry, and that they float in the water. So obviously he is a man of science. And then he mentions that the witches and warlocks in New York, they got a place in the village called the Zodiac. And this gets Shep's attention. Thinks it's a funny coincidence. And he asks Redlich to have a drink with him and, some friends later on. Obviously, probably, so they can go to the Zodiac. Well, Shep's friends are absolutely fascinated by Redlich's facts about witches. He brags that he can recognize witches and warlocks just by looking at them. Like, really? It's fascinating. Well, Shep decides he will definitely publish his book, and they celebrate with a drink accompanied by a toast from Redlich. Ring the bell, close the book, quench the candle. And he explains that's what was said when they used to exorcise witches and warlocks and ghosts and demons and everything like that, and obviously gives us the title of the film. Well, as they speak, Pyewacket jumps up on Shep's shoulder, and again, he begins sputtering and coughing and feeling allergic. When the party breaks up, Gillian tells Nikki to put Redlich off the trail. She doesn't want him finding Bianca de Pass, the source that he is looking for his book. Well, the way Nikki decides to do it is by revealing that he is a warlock, and he can get Redlich into society. Why does he do this? Because he's broke, and he figures this is a great way to get in on this book and make some serious money. Well, this leads to a montage of Nikki taking Redlich to all these secret places and teaching him secret things. Once that 50-50 cut, it is interspersed with images of Shep and Gillian having fun, dancing, skating, etc. And Shep is falling more and more in love. And Gillian is experiencing just normal things for the first time. She's never done these kinds of things. But you have to wonder what other effect all this is having on her. Their pleasant evening is interrupted when Nikki calls, and Gillian discovers what he's been up to with Redlich, and she is not at all pleased. And as we know, you don't really want to displease Gillian. She's also taken aback when Shep asks when they're going to get married. She tries to duck the question, but finally remarks that she just doesn't think she's cut out for marriage because of the selfish way that she's lived. She's never even thought of marriage. It would mean giving up a whole way of thinking. But if you look at her eyes, oh, she's thinking about it. And sort of alone for a moment, she wonders if she could. And I noticed his shoes were on the radiator drying, and she's holding the shoes there, which brought to my mind, walking a mile in another man's shoes. Can she walk in the shoes of a normal, non-magical life? Heck, she doesn't even wear shoes usually. So, it would be a really big step for her. So is this at all possible? Pyewacket disapproves of this plan. Obviously, Pyewacket doesn't, speak English or anything, but she communicates. But she says she will if she wants to. And she walks right into the other room and tells Shep she will marry him. Okay, well, is she giving into a desire, or is she trying to show her independence to Pyewacket and the whole culture that Pyewacket represents? Well, she goes to the club the next day to tell Nikki and finds out just how much he's been helping Redlich. Maybe a little bit too much, and she worries about the exposure and what it might do to all of them and what it might do to her relationship with Shep. Now, Nikki is pretty disturbed to hear about the marriage, and doubly so when she tells him she's renounced her old life, and she threatens Nikki with a final act of witchcraft if he doesn't stop helping Redlich. That night, she works her magic to make Shep completely unhappy with the manuscript that Sydney and Nikki have handed in. And sure enough, the next day, Shep rejects the manuscript at a meeting with those two. Redlich is like, I don't understand. This is great stuff. And Nikki's just smiling the whole time. He knows exactly what is happening. So they leave. Gillian arrives and confesses to Shep straight out, about her being a witch. And he is completely incredulous about it. It's a funny line there. Have you been engaging in un-American activities or something? And she replies, no, I'd say very American, early American. Well, he wants proof. Do something, magical. But she refuses at first. It's habit forming. She's not going to let it destroy her as a person. I thought that was very interesting, almost like it's a drug. Then she brings up their relationship and how it started. What made you kiss me? And like I said earlier, well, for starters, she's Kim Novak, so that would have that impact on a guy. But Shep tries to play it all off to humor her, but it does get him thinking. And a visit with Queenie when he gets home only makes it worse when she mentions that Gillian cast the spell to keep him from marrying Merle, who she didn't like. He thinks it was all about spite, that was the origination of all this. And when Queenie mentions that witches cannot fall in love, so now he's convinced it's spite. She can't even love me. And so it comes out. He confronts her. Are you in love with me now? She evades. He blows his cool, says he's getting out of the building and never coming back. She says, you will. You have to. She says this not with triumph in her voice, but with sort of resignation. And sure enough, he walks out of the shop and walks right back in saying taxi, seemingly unaware that he's walked right back into the shop. And then he looks around and that's the face he makes. He's like, oh, he needs help. Something is wrong here. Well, he seeks out Redlich and Nikki, and they introduce him to Madame de Pass, who performs a sort of exorcism or counterspell on him. Needless to say, those two enjoy it all a lot more than Shep does. And I will say, if I have a complaint with the movie at all, the whole scene with this little magical ritual thing that she does, to me, it goes a little bit long. It could have been snapped up a little bit. Well, the next morning, we see Nikki and Gillian watching the movers loading up Shep's furniture. And she says, it's what happens to people like us. We forfeit everything, and we end up in a little world of separateness from everyone. So we're talking trade-offs here, folks. Then Shep bursts in for a final confrontation, and he bids her good day. You mean goodbye? That's right. He didn't say goodbye. He said good day. And and I'll never see you again. Well, I can't see what for. And then he gives her a broom as sort of a, nasty joke. And that really sets her off. She vows to take it out on Merle. And that makes him nervous. She starts calling for Pyewacket, and he hurries out of there. But she can't find Pyewacket. Well, Shep goes to Merle, tells her everything. He's telling her, she can do magic. She's won. A witch? Yes. Come, Shep, you just never learned to spell. It's a great line in 1958. She doesn't believe him, thinks he's nuts, or maybe just looking for a way back into her life, but either way, it's not happening. Well, when Pyewacket is found by Queenie and brought into Gillian, he avoids her, runs from her, flees into the street. Gillian follows, calling his name. She's desperate, and then she realizes there's a tear in her eye. And we see her in front of the mirror with Queenie. You've lost your power? I've fallen in love. I was coming down with it all along. I guess I didn't know what it was. So she was falling in love the whole time. She'd never been there. She couldn't identify it. I guess in real life, we go through that first time we're in love. We don't always know why it is we're feeling what we're feeling inside. Well, Queenie asks what it's like. Is it wonderful? Wonderful? No, it's awful. Oh, Auntie, I don't want to be human. And any of us who have experienced a lost love know exactly how that feels. Well, we picked this story up 2 months later, so we're probably somewhere in February. Redlich is writing Madame de Pass's life story. Queenie is worried about Gillian. She's been so depressed. She can't help, and Nikki won't help. So who's going to help Gillian through all this? We then see Shep, who is just as miserable, very cranky with his secretary, and who appears at the window behind him while he's yelling about this and that, but Pyewacket. And he secures the cat and heads angrily back to his ex-girlfriend's shop because he's convinced that she's trying to get back into him, into his life with magic. But the shop is now called Flowers of the Sea, and the place has changed, and Gillian has changed. And he's angry about her sending Pyewacket to ensnare him, which, she claims she did not do. And of course, he doesn't believe her. The conversation, though, gradually becomes more pleasant. But eventually she notices, at one point, when she turns away from him, that she's crying. And he realizes now that she did fall in love with him, which is why she's no longer a witch. She no longer has the powers. She can now cry. Apparently she doesn't float in water anymore as well. And he knows that he loved her and that it's real this time. Or was it real all along? Who is to say what magic really is? He says, "Do you want to stop crying now?" She goes, "I don't know if I can. I'm only human." And I think it's meaningful that it ends with an embrace rather than a kiss. A kiss is that point of contact. There's a lot of passion in it and stuff, but an embrace is like two souls intertwined. It can be much more powerful than a kiss. Well, Queenie is quite happy at all of this. Nicky, not so much. He's kind of just like, ugh, what is this? And we end with Pyewacket, who perhaps did one final kindness for his former mistress when he showed up at Shep's apartment. Okay. So let's talk about this movie a little bit. Like I said, I think a lot of people now, and maybe even then, they would look for a certain message, right? This woman, who's very powerful, gives it all up for a man, a much more sort of domestic lifestyle. Oh, is this sort of, anti-feminist? Is this, about men getting dominance over women, blah, 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 blah. There's a lot of people who are going to look at it through that lens. And I think it's completely wrong, because we do not behave as collectives. And when you try to make characters in a movie behave as part of a collective, it tends to come off as very just unreal, not very true. What you have is you have a guy who is in a relationship with this woman who, frankly, it's just not very nice. You're just not really sure how much in love he actually is with her, how much in love she is with him. It's not good for a guy to, break up with one woman for another per se, unless there's maybe something more, a spark there. And of course he wasn't married, to Merle yet at that point. With Gillian, you have a woman who is frankly looking for something more. Okay, she's powerful, but she's also lonely. Okay, she's got Queenie, she's got Nicky, she has all of her friends down at the weird club, but she doesn't have a much deeper relationship with any of them. And she almost cannot have a much deeper relationship with any of them, because if they're anything like her, they apparently can't easily fall in love. Certainly seems that way. What you're talking about are two individuals who are lonely, especially her, and looking for something more. And she finds it in Shep, even though maybe initially she approaches it as, I'm just bored with my life, I need something new. But I think she gradually discovers something much more deep and much more satisfying than their magical powers. And there is a bit in it where, she talks about, we have these powers, but we can't really use them for anything important because it would be too obvious. So, Nicky and Queenie kind of use it for pranks. She kind of did the same thing with Merle. She's afraid of thunderstorms. So during their last term at Wellesley, Gillian summoned up massive thunderstorms over a long period of time to just drive her, crazy. So it's like, you have all these powers. What can you really do with them? There's actually a very interesting bit in I Dream of Jeanie where where not Roger, Tony gets Jeannie's powers, and he's saying, oh, I can make the Sahara a green and pleasant place, and I could solve this and solve that. And Jeannie's like, well, if you bring water to the Sahara, you've got to take it from someplace else. And she's kind of saying the same thing. It's like, it seems like we're massively powerful, but there are consequences. There are prices to pay for everything that we do. And that's why a lot of these magicians end up using their stuff for more seemingly petty things. It's because the price isn't so high. Well, the price for Jillian's power is loneliness. It's separation. And she manages to find her way out of that. It's a very beautiful film. I think it's a beautiful story to be told about two people. Again, it's a romantic comedy, and there are some very funny parts in it. Very well cast, very well acted throughout. I mean, again, you need this kind of weird, eccentric guy who maybe seems a little bit shady. You got Ernie Kovacs. You need this sort of young guy who's kind of a smart ass, etc. Jack Lemmon, especially at that point in time. Lemmon played characters like that a lot. You got Elsa Lanchester playing this sort of eccentric, maybe a little bit airheaded, older witch. Kim Novak with that very cool way that she does things, and that stare and those eyes of hers, right? And Jimmy Stewart playing it's really perfect casting in it. So there you have it, folks. Bell, Book, and Candle. I think it's a great flick. It's one my wife introduced me to. And honestly, the first time I watched it, I was like, oh man, she does kind of give everything up for this guy. Is he really worth it? Cause I was younger, I got a little older, and I'm kind of going, well, I mean, now that I've been married for a long time, it's like, oh yeah. I mean, if it's a really good marriage, it's absolutely worth it. You do sacrifice things, but you get something so much better than what you gave up. And I think that's probably the case with Gillian in Bell, Book, and Candle. Let me know what you think in the comments of this film. If you've seen it before, if you have any questions about the movie, I'd love to answer them for you. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, maybe subscribe, maybe share with a friend. One last thing. Is this a Christmas movie? It initially takes place Christmas Eve and Christmas. There's certainly an element of love in it, which is important in Christmas. Is it a Christmas movie? Not exactly, which is why I thought it worked well between Halloween and Christmas. It's got a little bit of both in it. But at any rate, if you enjoyed this, please give it a like, subscribe, share with a friend. Until next time, God bless everybody. Please be kind to one another. Have a little bit of fun out there, and I will see you hopefully soon in Dad's Den of Pop Culture. Bye-bye.